Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about armadillos. I've had a lot of calls about armadillos this summer. I think this was a good summer. They raised plenty of young, and they've been invading people's yards. I think the drought has made them concentrate on folks that are irrigating their lawns and their flower beds. That makes for easier digging. They eat insects and grubs, and if you're watering your lawn, it makes the grubs come up closer to the surface, and it makes the lawn easier for them to dig in. So they're kind of in the anteater category. In fact, they will eat fire ants. If it wasn't for tearing up the turf and the flower beds, you could consider them to be beneficial creatures, because they do eat a lot of insects that we would like to not have around. They're kind of interesting. If you ever walk up on an armadillo and you startle him, he can jump up in the air about this high. He can jump 4 feet off the ground. And when he does, it startles you, and you kind of back up and say, whoa, what is that? And by the time you figure out what's going on, he's already hidden from you, and he's hard to find. I had a friend of mine from Montana was here one time. We were walking through the woods and came up on an armadillo, and it did that. It jumped up in the air, and then it kind of vanished, and he'd never seen an armadillo before, so he wanted to get some pictures of it. And it probably took us 10 minutes to find that armadillo. He was just up under the brush there, hiding from us. They can inflate their intestines in their stomach, and they can float. So if they got to go a long ways across a body of water, they blow themselves up, and although they're pretty good swimmers, they can do a lot of floating when they puff themselves up. They can also swell themselves up like that. If a coyote or something gets after them and they go down in their hole, they can swell themselves up in that hole, and the predators will get tired of trying to get them out of there and give up on them before they do any damage to them. They also can hold their breath, they say, for up to 6 minutes. I'm not sure, but they can walk across a body of water on the bottom. If it's not very far, they just hold their breath and walk across the bottom. They were known as Hoover hogs back during the Depression, because folks blamed President Hoover on the Depression, and they were having to eat armadillos to survive. So they had that nickname of Hoover hogs. That jumping characteristic that they have is why you see so many of them dead on the highway. If you try to miss him, he's going to jump at the last minute, and you just can't hardly miss him, because he's going to jump up into the car whether you missed him or not. They are carriers of Hansen's disease or leprosy. They have that bacterium. About 20% of the population of the 9-banded armadillo are suspected of having that bacterium. It doesn't really bother the armadillo. They don't live that long for it to have any effect on them. But if you're planning on keeping one as a pet, we don't recommend that. Or if you're going to hunt them and eat them, you need to cook them really good, because eating raw armadillo is another way you can get that leprosy bacteria from them. They're a perfect carrier. They're used in the research on leprosy because they've got a body temperature of about 90 degrees, and the bacterium lives in that environment. It doesn't live very long at all if it gets out of the body. So they're a perfect candidate to use for research into leprosy. The good news is 95% of the people don't get leprosy, and the chances of you getting leprosy from an armadillo are pretty slim. In fact, we think humans gave leprosy to the armadillo about 400 years ago. So that is something to consider if you're thinking that you'd like to have one for a pet. They're eating grubs. They're insects and grubs. So in your flower bed where you've got all your mulch put down, as it starts to decompose, insects are part of the decomposition process. So you've got earwigs and centipedes and millipedes and beetles and snails, and all of those kind of things are in that mulch as it composts. So you might want to consider getting rid of their food source as a control mechanism. If you can treat the yard for grubs and get rid of some of the grubs, consider using some inorganic mulching materials. I got a piece of this material just laying here that lets the water through, doesn't let the weeds get through, and it doesn't decompose, so therefore it's not an attracting thing for insects. So if you can do that, you also use some pea gravel on top of it. That makes a fairly attractive place. We've got some pea gravel here in this garden on plastic. So just consider those things as you're working with them. They can also be trapped. We had a class not long ago, and I said we were going to talk about armadillos, and 76 people showed up, and they all had their armadillo stories, and some of them had trapped 17 in the same place, and one guy he'd trapped 13. I was kind of amazed at how many people stay up all night with their high-powered flashlights waiting to shoot armadillos if they come in their yards. I think some of these neighborhoods have got armadillo militias that go after them every night. So that is working them on the end of the spectrum, though. If you get rid of their food source, if you don't let them live under your house, they can't stand the cold temperatures in winter. So when we have a cold winter, that will eliminate some of them, unless you're letting him live under your house where it's warm under the house and all, then he can survive the winter pretty good. They come out at night mostly, but in the wintertime when it's cold, they will come out during the heat of the day. So they don't hibernate, so they got to forage for food at least every other day or so. So a good cold winter will help control them. The other thing you can do is trap them. Some people have good results with trapping them using all kinds of cages. Some people build big rabbit boxes, others use steel traps, but they say that the wooden traps that have a door on each end are the most successful. They see through it. They think they're just walking into a tunnel. You don't need to use any bait. You set it in a place where they're traveling anyway. Some people take popsicle sticks and string up and put a tripwire up so they can kind of tell how they're coming into the garden or how they're coming in the yard, and that's where they set their trap. They will put wings on the trap so that directs them into the trap. You don't want to bait the trap. You'll see people say put peanut butter in it, put all sorts of things in there, earthworms. But if you bait the trap, you're gonna catch raccoons and you're gonna catch possums and you're gonna catch squirrels and not so many armadillos. So you set it up where they're traveling. You put the wings out on the trap so that you can guide them into the trap, and they'll just walk in. Once you catch one, the wooden trap holds their scent better, and so it's easier to catch the next one and the next one. So we built this trap right here that just to give you an idea of what a trap would look like. It's got a little stick on it here that hooks down. And so that's what it looks like when it's in the set position. The stick goes down inside, so as they try to walk through it and they interfere with this stick, closes both doors down on them, and so now you have him captured. If you're going to set traps, so you got to check them every day. You you can't go trap something in a trap and let it sit there for 3 or 4 days before you go do whatever you're going to do with it. But that's one way that you build a trap to catch them. And like I said, other people have good luck with other traps. The key thing is to set it where they're traveling and just give them something that tracks them into the depths. You can put little fences around some of your plants. An armadillo can climb over a fence, but if you set the fence at about a 40-degree angle around the flower bed, he won't generally mess with that. He'll walk on past it. And that's about what I know about armadillos.